One day a little girl was sitting at the kitchen table drawing with her crayons. Her mother came in and noticed her and said, "What are you drawing, honey?" And without looking up, the little girl said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And her mother said, "Oh, that's wonderful. Now you realize that nobody knows what God looks like." And the little girl replied, "They will when I'm finished." Sometimes we struggle not only to draw a picture of God, but even to find words that are adequate to describe God, who's beyond our human language. And that's true of other realities as well, and true of other human experiences, especially those that take our breath away, like a view of the Grand Canyon or a beautiful sunset that we struggle to put into words. And Jesus knew that it would be difficult for people to understand and grasp the meaning of the kingdom of God, the reign of God that he came to establish, especially since some people were expecting a very different kind of kingdom. In the Gospels, Jesus doesn't define the reign of God. It's too rich of a reality for that. He tells people what the reign of God is like, using stories, parables, to point to this reality that's so central to his preaching and his mission. In today's Gospel, he tells the crowd that the reign of God is like a farmer scattering seed on the land. And when the farmer's finished, he goes about his everyday activities, he goes to bed at night, gets up the next day, not worrying about the seed, which on its own begins to sprout and to grow. The farmer doesn't know how this happens, but at some point the crop is ready to harvest. Jesus goes on to remind the people of the mustard seed, such a tiny seed, but it grows into a plant or a shrub large enough to enable the birds of the air to come and find shelter in the shade. All from just a tiny seed. Just another glimpse of what the reign of God is like. Now the people in the crowd certainly knew what Jesus was talking about. Farmers and gardeners today also understand this image of seeds growing. And even those of us who don't have a green thumb can grasp the rich reality that Jesus points to with these stories. The parable of the farmer who sows the seed and then just steps back and watches the seed grow reminds us that it's God's reign. It's God's kingdom, not ours. We'll have a part to play, but God is at work in our world. The Spirit of God is present whenever we see signs of the seed of God's reign growing around us. Whenever we see even a little more justice and peace and reconciliation and love taking root in our world. At times we may feel frustrated and discouraged by the hatred and the violence we see every day in our world. Frustrated that the seeds of God's reign are growing so slowly and not in the ways we expected. It's God's reign. And sometimes we need to just let go and let God be God. Jesus reminds us also that the reign of God often begins in very small ways, in small seeds of compassion and love or forgiveness. But like a tiny mustard seed, the reign of God grows into a shrub large enough for birds to find shade and shelter. And our first reading from Ezekiel describes a tender shoot, a small branch that grows into a majestic cedar where birds of every kind will find shelter and shade. Birds of every kind. That's also a glimpse of the reign of God that Jesus is describing. All are welcome in God's reign. People of every race and language and culture. Not only my race and language and culture. Now I'm guessing that those of you who are farmers or gardeners also realize that there are ways we can help the seed to grow, while still trusting that it's God's reign and not ours. Now the farmer in the first parable seems to just plant the seed and let it grow on its own. But in other parables, Jesus also talks about weeds, Farmers and gardeners certainly know about weeds. I'm sure Jesus is also challenging us to look into our own garden, into our own heart, to see if there are weeds that are keeping the seed from growing, preventing the rain of God from growing in our hearts and therefore in our world. What might be some of those weeds in my heart? Do I become so entangled in my own worries and concerns that I don't even see the needs of my brothers and sisters? I don't take time to listen to someone else's struggle. And I miss the opportunity then to listen to someone who just needs my care and concern. Do I become so rooted in my own culture and my ways of seeing and acting that I miss the richness of other cultures? Am I willing to step out of the comfort of my own culture to enter another person's cultural world, to enter that world with respect and openness and a willingness to learn? If I'm willing to reach out to other people, even people who seem very different from me, very different until I get to know them and discover how much we have in common. If I'm willing to reach out in understanding and love, then the seed of God's reign is growing in my heart. And then I'm enabling the reign of God to grow in the world around me. When we respond as generously as we can to the call of Jesus to bring even a little bit more compassion, forgiveness, justice, and love to our world, then we are drawing a picture of the reign of God. Drawing not with crayons, but with the witness of our lives.